to the show. The show is all about you. Not you, but you and your stories. Because everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Brought to you by JeffSeltzer.com.
Hello and welcome to Everybody Has a Story with Jeff Seltzer. I'm your host, Jeff Seltzer, and for only the second time, I actually have a co-host this week. So for those of you that are watching, you probably see him. For those of you who are listening, you probably can't see him. I did want to welcome back to the show for I believe it's the fifth time, keep me honest here, my buddy, my pal, my good friend, Marcus Percal. Marcus, how are you today?
I'm good, Jeff. Excited for this episode. Thanks for having me on.
Me too. And for those of you that are confused, he also goes by his maiden name of Marcus Brandon sometimes. So if there's any confusion out there, those are his alter egos. So with that said, this week we are doing an episode on AI. AI is basically everywhere. You can't escape it. It's wherever you go. At work, I hear about it all the time. On CNBC, I hear about it all the time. You know, all that kind of stuff. It's everywhere. So Marcus was actually somebody who introduced me to a lot of usage of AI. Specifically with even the theme song. So, as he's my co-host this week and has been a guest multiple times, he is obviously the senior executive musical producer of this show, which he created a song using AI. So for me, I thought that was really cool. On top of the fact that on a side note, we have a fantasy WNBA basketball league because we are all feminists at heart. And in that league, he created multiple logos for teams and for the league using AI. So for me, it kind of showed me like, hey, maybe AI is something, maybe it doesn't have to be super complex. You can use it as basic or as high level as you want to. So Marcus and I will be talking to our guest for the week, Mark Andrews, momentarily. But beforehand, I did want to go over the usual show plugs. So for those of you that want to find information about the show, on Instagram, you can find the show at Everybody Has a Story Pod. The TikTok for the show is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. My personal Instagram is at Seltzer77, although it's locked for now, so you can check it out, but you probably can't follow me today. If you want to reach the show directly, you can email the show at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com. For all things Jeff Seltzer, you can always check me out at jeffseltzer.com. Lots of cool clips, lots of cool show information, and I believe it's Claire that I work with's favorite website, as she reminds me every time she walks by, so shout out to Claire. As a reminder, we're on all podcast platforms. We're on video on Spotify and YouTube at Everybody Has a Story Pod. We're audio, those two places, as well as Apple, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, and anywhere else you can find a podcast. So definitely check it out. Tell everyone you know. Lots of cool stuff is happening. With that said, I did want to bring in my guest for the week, Mark Andrews. Mark, welcome back, as this is a two-timer now. Mark, thank you for joining the show.
Jeff, thank you. Marcus, thank you for having me on.
Of course. So it's good to have you again. We last connected, I believe it was back in like February or March. We talked about technology, which was a really, really cool conversation. We talked about a lot of different things. We talked about your baseball background and things like that. So I want to do a little bit of an icebreaker, I guess, before we get into the topic of AI. And this is one where I did a little digging on my own for AI. So this touches both Marcus, Mark, and myself, figuratively, not literally. So as we're talking AI, one of the things that I've found most recently that I've liked the most about AI is, for years we've all done Google searches, and you say like, hey, tell me about, I don't know, a gas station, or tell me about a person, or whatever else like that. Now if you go into Google, one of the options when you do a search is like AI search. And what it'll do is it'll summarize from lots of different places, like what you know about it. So what I wanted to do was check out the most notable Jeff Seltzer, the most notable Marcus Percal, and the most notable Mark Andrews, just to get a sense of like, hey, what is our Q rating of sorts, or kind of like how notable each of us are. So first, what I'm going to do is Marcus was the easiest one. So first off, I checked out Marcus Brandon, and nothing really popped up. Didn't really find much. I'm sure Marcus is probably fact checking me right now, but last I checked a couple days ago, wasn't much there. What I will say is when I checked out Marcus Percal, this is what really got me excited. In a obviously very.
I can only guess.
In a very professional
New York Times article, but let's hear about
it. A very professional and platonic way. I got very excited about this. So the Marcus Percal that we are looking at and talking to right now was the number one most notable Marcus Percal. I guess it's not a very common name. Obviously, it pulled in things it looks like from probably his LinkedIn, talking about sales growth and customer experience, particularly his time with the Zillow Group and later Cash App. Check out his LinkedIn if you want more. But more specifically, he is also
that is not
guest
fully accurate
on the podcast. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. So we'll get back past the inaccuracies in a second. But the fact that the podcast was in his top notable aspects, I thought was really, really cool. And I'm going to shout out IMDb probably for that, and the fact that that was something that I found earlier in the podcast when I first started. That's gotten the podcast as well as my guests a lot more credibility, because when they do a search for a name, it just pulls in from there. And it looks legit, like as unlegit as this podcast might really be. You right off the bat got like, it shows like you're important or whatever else like that. So I thought that was pretty neat. The Zilla Group, I think you in our conversations you said is correct. The Cash App piece. Did you never work at Cash App?
I did not. I just actually Googled it. And I mean, this is a short falling of AI, but there's another guy. The first name is Marcus. Last name is Pengue. And he seems like he is much more successful than I am and spent a lot of time at Cash App. So,
okay. Well, do you have a Cash App account?
Yeah, but it's not active.
I'm sure.
It's probably a good way for me to get scammed. But yes.
Probably. But what I will say is below that, it does show your media appearances, which are all on this, talking about making friends online, card collecting, and wrestling events like WrestleMania. So that seems pretty factual, which is probably all from the podcast as well. Also, I'm guessing this may or may not be you. It says, in the news, New York Times quoted Prakal, then a high school student, regarding his thoughts on Jose Canseco's book, Juiced, where he stated, "I'm a fan. I give him credit for saying it." Would that be this Marcus Prakal?
that is this Marcus Prakal.
Look at you.
And that ties back to probably more close to every other episode that I've been on, not this one. But really short story on it was in high school as a side hustle. I was selling autographed books on eBay, but to keep it a good side hustle, I didn't want any inventory. So I would pre-sell autographed signed books. The local bookstore in New Jersey was having Jose Canseco in, and I pre-sold 27 copies of the book. And then when I went to the store to pick them up, the New York Times was rapid to approach a high schooler who was carrying 27 signed books out of the store. And in a quick panic, when they said, "Why did I have so many copies of the book?" and to not openly tell the store that I had sold them for double what they were charging, I just said that I commended the fact that he was actually honest, and not many other baseball players were at the time.
Awesome. So apparently, big Jose Canseco fan, it appears. So that's great.
And Jeff, this will mean something to you, and she always gets a shout out. You can imagine how mortified my mom was standing next to me when I said that, knowing that I was we drove back from a college early so I could get there, and that I was applying for colleges, and this is going to end up online, and I'm saying I support steroid use.
No.
But yeah, that was me.
Well, it's about as good as, and this clip's over at jeffseltzer.com. I should probably highlight it this week. When I was in college, this was like 1998, 1999, a buddy of mine and I at Rutgers were walking down College Ave, and News Channel 12 approached and was like, "Hey, do you know about this Rage Against the Machine and this cop killer?" We're like, "No." They're like, "Okay, well, there's this concert Rage Against the Machine is going to have, and they're going to raise money for a cop killer. Can you talk about it on the news?" We're like, "Okay." So there's a great clip of my buddy going, I'm not going to go see Rage because my money shouldn't go defend the cop killer. Then there's a follow-up footage of me going, "Yeah, well, what they do with the money after I pay for the concert doesn't matter. So if they want to defend a cop killer, that's on them." This was like almost 30 years ago at this point. But I still have the video. I think it's up on jeffseltzer.com. So I'll see if I can post that out or whatever. But time is weird. This is also why I don't let my daughter, who's now 18 years old, on the podcast, because you never know what these people will say or what people might regret years later. We're all well above consenting adult age and want to make sure everyone's comfortable and knows what they're doing at this point. Mark Andrews, I will get to you momentarily because you're obviously the reason why I thought this notable thing was important. But lastly, I did want to go over most notable Jeff Seltzers. I was number 2. Number 1 was the Jeff Seltzer that I referenced on last week's episode, who's a venture capitalist, angel investor. He's probably a gazillionaire or something like that, and had zero interest on being on podcast, which was again followed up by the podcast host and media personality from Rockaway, New Jersey, Jeff Seltzer, which would be this guy. And then it's got a plug for the show. Then there's also a marketing and strategy executive, which is not me, as well as the photographer and artist, which intrigues me because for years, the photographer and artist was the number 1 Google search of Jeff Seltzer. And then it looks like he's fallen down to number 4 or 5. So it looks like, like I said, my IMDb has definitely pushed me up a little more notable than him, but I hope he's having a good life with his pictures and such. Mark Andrews, I'm sure, I mean, obviously, growing up with the name, you probably know who the most notable Mark Andrews are. But let me test your knowledge to see how it goes up against what AI says.
All right. I'm going to say the number one most notable is the Ravens player. I think
Yes.
that's going to be number one.
Yes.
Number two, I think I might have to give to Cisco, who's famous for the Thong Song, who also carries my name. Was he pulled in as well?
So I was going to say, I thought I was going to stump you on that one. He was not number two. He was on the list. I believe he was like 4 or 5. He was definitely on the list, though. It's probably one of those things where, he probably pulled from his Wikipedia and, pulled the name. But the average person or the average article doesn't refer to Cisco as Mark Andrews. So that's probably why he's not up as high as he probably should be. Number 2, and Marcus will obviously get this one, would be professional wrestler Mark Andrews. I think he's more indie-rific at this point or whatever, but he's been on TNA and PWG in the PW.
He was on WWE. He was in NXT UK.
Yeah. So he's been around a little bit. There's also a filmmaker who's an animation filmmaker at Pixar Animation Studios, Mark Andrews. Also a politician, a former American politician and U.S. Senator from North Dakota.
Interesting.
Yes. So what I will say is disappointing that we haven't gotten you on this list yet. I will obviously add you as your second credit for IMDb after this conversation. Hopefully we can work your way up. Also been the fact that you do work in AI. I would hope that you can kind of, build that online presence a little bit. So we'll work together. We'll get you there. I'm sure we can find a way to at least get you in the top 5 at some point. But
that sounds good.
Going against a wrestler or baseball player and a musical icon, let's say, is definitely a challenge that both Marcus and myself don't have to deal with.
Yeah, and you know what? If I do go viral with some kind of like semi-violent crime, I think I can take the number 5 spot. I think I can get up there.
Yeah, I mean,
I think if it's as long as it's just semi-violent and it's not cancelable, I think you could probably pass the wrestler as well. Yeah.
Interesting. I'll think about that. Maybe I can frame like some type of like heroic, yet like somewhat, something that gets me some type of like misdemeanor or something that could really bring me to the top.
I think so. I mean, I think we could probably maybe the topic for your third appearance in the show, we can definitely talk about like what you just did, like whatever it was, whether it's good or bad. And that'll hopefully skyrocket you up. I mean, if nothing else at that point, I'm just hoping to kind of like take credit for, for something there, whatever, because you would have done it all at that point. Either you won $1 billion or you're spending time in jail. But either way, I mean, if you get, 1 hour a week on the phone, we could probably hook up a podcast situation or whatever it is. It'll be fun.
I like that. Yeah. A PR partnership.
Definitely the way to go. So with that said, Mark, again, thank you for joining, and Marcus, thank you for guesting. So Mark, last we talked, we talked technology, and you were in the process of starting up a new business. So we're going to get into like what is AI, why is AI, and all that kind of stuff. But did want to kind of briefly just talk about like what is this business, right? So as I see on the screen, you're the CEO at AI Profits, which CEO sounds super, super important. And AI, obviously, everyone's talking about it and it's everywhere. Can you kind of walk us through like what is your business and like what are your goals?
Absolutely. So I was in a unique position, like working in technology, marketing technology, and having gotten a degree in data science, in the early 2020s, right when kind of AI was really starting to pick up steam. And I just had kind of this realization that I need to stop working for the man. I want to go make my own business. I've kind of carved out this niche as a somewhat like subject matter expert with a technical background and a data science background that kind of helped me solve and see kind of a different wavelength. And from there, I said, what does that type of business look like? Is it a consulting agency? Is it kind of an advisory type of approach? I don't exactly know. So I launched AI Profits as basically the goal to shepherd organizations and teams into using AI at their work kind of in a repeatable way that was simple. And I wanted to kind of be like kind of this purveyor of using this new technology, but in a way that's more strategic. So when I started the business, I launched it in April. And my whole intention was to help train and like upskill people with AI, similar to how, you would do product training and really try to help enable something that's far beyond just a tool, but the human brain using that tool in their respective areas. And over time, it's kind of taken like this squirrely path between I do training, but my real focus is like product acceleration and product excellence and helping use AI to solve business challenges. And as I've been going through this, I've worked with small companies, medium companies, large companies, and I've kind of found my niche in like the enterprise area. So like large and institutional organizations with big teams. So as I made this business, I've been kind of leaning and listening to the market and just trying to kind of lean into where I saw the most opportunity. And it's been a journey. It's been a crazy 8 months now.
Got it. So, and again, if you said this and I didn't necessarily hear it, I apologize. Are you creating your own technologies and AIs? Are you showing companies and people how to best use existing AIs? Like, where would you say like your expertise and kind of like where your strengths are at this point?
I'd say right now it's at helping like co-create AI tools internally, and then by helping manage builders and orchestrating kind of the builders versus the users of AI. And I do this a lot internally with already mature tech stacks. But as you can imagine, it's the OpenAIs of the world, the Google Geminis of the world, and the Microsoft Copilots. So the technology all functions in such a similar way that when it differs from one kind of model or one tool to another, there's not too much of a difference within the strategy itself.
Got it. And let me ask this also, like, is it like advanced, like super complicated things, or is it like simple things? So, like in terms of like how I've used AI, let's say both personally and professionally, it's been pushed on me to kind of like, hey, use AI to summarize or look at emails or to summarize a meeting. Or is it things like, hey, take this 25,000 row spreadsheet and summarize certain things? Like what do you see is kind of like where you're doing most of your work or you're seeing most of the efforts at?
It's really is a range. And I often say that like AI is it's like an iceberg, and I think at the topical level, like a lot of the tier one use cases that, I find myself in are simply like what you described, like prompting into Copilot, trying to extract a certain set of data or perform a certain task on just a conversational level. And that really kind of encapsulates, like, say, 50, 60% of the use cases that, everyone can get behind, right? We can all use AI to save some time at work. But where it starts to get more tactical is when we go into agents and building out sequences of automation and AI that may be dependent on data or structured or clean data. And that's where the story kind of changes a bit, because we're not just using a prompt to do something. We have to go through this exercise of like, okay, is this team AI ready? Is your data AI ready? Is AI going to fit on top of it like a Lego block, or do we kind of need to build and prepare it in such a way? And those are the discussions and the opportunities that commonly have more of a dependency on data, whether like real-time data or overtime data, but really do go into like those engineering kind of conversations into the warehouse and seeing which data tables can be orchestrated and how they can be built. So it really is like a range of complexity based on who I'm working with. I will say like analytics, supply chain, and data in itself tends to be more in-depth because of that more data-dependent nature, versus processes and operations might be a little bit easier because they could be based on a flow or a sequence. So really, it's kind of like the design of how you learn about how AI needs to be rolled out. And just ask like thousands of questions sometimes. And they just like bug the living daylights out of people. But you need to know these answers,
Do you find there's a lot of fallacies? Like a company might bring you in and say, hey, we want you to set the world on fire and do all this stuff with AI. And you're like, whoa, calm down. Like, you got to go from 0 to 60. You got to work your way up, or like, hey, you're not ready for that or whatever. Or, oftentimes consultants will come in, not going to name them, but they'll say like, hey, give us all this money and all this stuff will happen, right? Or you can do all this stuff. Like, do you find that you walk in after the consultant was there and the CEO is like, yeah, consultant XYZ said we can do this with AI in like 3 weeks. Go do it for us now, or are expectations realistic?
Very good question. And my answer is I do a lot of the picking up of the pieces of poor consultants before me. So when
you say poor, you mean not good work, not necessarily poor as in
they're probably rich because they didn't do good work.
That's right.
Yes. Yeah, and it's I think that there was a certain level of over-promising that the influencers, the Microsofts, the ChatGPTs, the Gammas of the world started to do.
Right.
And I think it painted an unrealistic expectation. I also think that, there's some kind of AI type of people like me who go in and they're all about capability and functionality. And hey, look what it can do. And hey, is this your problem? Well, guess what? It can do this. It can do X, Y, and Z. And I almost think that while that could be great in a way, it's almost like a grandiose vision of, hey, in a perfect world, here's what it could look like. So my approach is more along the lines of like the Albert Einstein. Like if Albert Einstein had 1 hour to save the world, he would spend the first 55 minutes learning about all the problems, learning about what's happening, all of the data, and then the 5 minutes putting together a solution. And I actually find that like that design first approach helps you learn about these nuances and dependencies, because one little wrench in the cog of AI can completely destroy it all. So that's what I found is to be kind of the main thing that I'm doing. And sometimes it's just like a previous tool they use that worked and then it stopped working, and now they're looking at the next new tool. So it's difficult because the top of mind awareness nature of AI is constantly evolving. So sometimes it's a lot of due diligence and training and understanding what's available that might not have been available the week prior.
Do you see so obviously I'm sure you probably use AI in your personal time as well. Like, do you find that the tools used in personal AI are similar or the same as professional? Or like would you use Copilot in both? Or do you have like, these are my tools that are more basic for personal, and these are the ones that I use professionally to kind of like sell in or work with, the various companies?
Yeah, I use ChatGPT personally, and I use a tool called N8N to build out automations and like sequential workflows. I do see a lot of organizations using OpenAI and then using the Geminis. It really is kind of like, it depends on like where they're at organizationally. The area that I actually see doing really well right now, though, is Gemini specifically. I feel as if their models have been updating. They have really powerful creative models, and they're starting to kind of expand their web of influence more so outward. And it kind of asks the question, like, which company is most poised to grow with AI, right? Like, who has the data centers? Who has the infrastructure? Who has the team? So I've started to see Google as naturally like leading that charge a little bit as of late.
Yeah. It's funny. I was messaging with somebody at work today, and they're like, yeah, we're in these meetings and they keep talking about how AI is going to do everything. Like, what are your thoughts? I was like, well, I mean, me personally, my current thought is, sure, right now, AI is the hottest thing. It's like in the early 2000s, right? Like, everybody needed to have a website. Like, that was going to be the big thing. Like, if you didn't have a website, whatever else like that. Like, things have changed, things have evolved. Like, I think AI is very important. I think AI is going to do a lot of things. I think at the end of the day, AI will probably do, and if it does, 15 to 20% of what they say it's going to do, it's a success. Right. Like, some people, I think, will try to use AI. It's the new tool, right? It's a shiny object. People try to use it in places where maybe it shouldn't be used, or just force fitting it because, well, their boss told them to use it, so they have to use it, and it ends up being like more of what it doesn't need to be. I think AI is, at least me personally, I think AI is great and is going to be super helpful and useful. I think we're going to go through a number of cycles where they're going to lay off a bunch of people, then rehire people, and all this noise is going to happen until eventually, when the dust settles, let's say in 5 years or so. And it'll be like a set of tools that will probably replace some people and will probably create more efficiencies, but it's not going to, it won't be Skynet. I don't think it's not going to take over everything, and hopefully it won't. And it won't do everything that everyone right now says or thinks that it will do. Like, some of the companies, like on Wall Street, that are going 100% on AI, some of them will probably do okay, but it'll be like, when the internet was coming up, you had so many different companies that's you were banking on, and only a small percentage of them actually ended up making it, years later.
Yeah,
it's interesting. Sorry to jump over you, Mark. I feel like my brother said this to me, and my brother is definitely, he's very well versed in AI. He's, Jeff, you said that I kind of, have sent you things, whether it's logos of sports teams, yes, or what songs or videos, and like, it's always my brother texting me first, being like, hey, like, I have a code for this, or like, have you checked this out? Yeah, this is like what you need. Right. And how he described it, I think, is really spot on. Is like, right now, what AI is doing is what we all said that Ask Jeeves was doing the first time we used it. You were like, yes, you get on this thing and you ask it anything and it can do it. And then really quickly, we all realized like, some of the things you ask it can do, and a lot of things you ask it can't do, but it gives you an answer that's wrong. Right. And it's the next generation of that. Like, I use AI every single day in my personal life, just for things that I would have always wanted to do that maybe I didn't have the means to do. Right. And at work, I would say I use it multiple times a week, maybe not every day. But Jeff, to your point, is also in my work. Without talking too much about like my current job, I sell lead generation. And a lot of my clients at an enterprise level are, taking on tons of leads, and they're all looking at the bright new shiny object of, how can I use AI to work my leads? And I have a lot of my my clients that are doing it right, it's super powerful. And I also had a conversation with a guy 2 days ago who was like, AI is causing such an issue for us because our call center guys view it as competition, and we have a great system. we spent a ton of money on it. The guy who set it up left, and as a result, no one really knows exactly what it's doing. But our people feel like like they're competing with it. They don't like it, and we're not using it properly.
Well, it's like, sorry to interrupt real quick. It's like the episode of The Office. I'm not sure if you remember from years ago. There was one, I think, where they wanted leads to go through the website instead of, I think, Jim and Dwight making the sales. And then they were competing against themselves. It legitimately was an Office episode, which is crazy to think about it.
I mean, that's exactly what it is. And that's the problem, is it's so powerful and you can rely on it. And if you use it right and you're using it well, you have the right people behind it, which is the key. It's not just the machine. You need people behind it, like someone, like Mark. It is so powerful. But if you set it up and you don't set it up right, it can devastate your business. And that's the problem. And that's where you're going to start seeing these cycles of, we set up AI, we thought it was doing all the stuff, it wasn't doing it right. We got to peel back the layers and get back, that personal touch, and if you will.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's interesting you say that, because I think it almost depicts a range of comfort. It's like, how comfortable and how willing are you to use it at your personal work and at your personal life, right? But I think the benefit of having that curiosity is you're learning what these things can do, and you're kind of arming yourself with like this knowledge and capability that like 80% of the non-curious people won't do, right? So it's almost like helping you see into the future of like, okay, what could this look like in a few years? And it's really interesting because I think one of the biggest pieces of advice for people I have is like, hey, just start using it. Just like find something that's bugging you. Like if you were to go search for a product, go to ChatGPT and ask it to find you the cheapest one, and then compare that to the site you normally shop on, right? Like it's almost a 99% success rate that it'll find it cheaper.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like me being in this role on this podcast today is so different than the other times I've been on, which has all been about, wrestling and collectibles and such. But as that is my personality, I was driving to a wrestling convention that was 4 hours away 2 weeks ago with my dad. And he, in our conversation of 8 hours of driving, it became an extra hour on the way home because he wanted to stop at Buc-ee's. He went out of the way to do so. He's like, what do you use ChatGPT for? Just like, give me examples. And I was like, you know what? This is something that you can relate to. And this is something I use it in my personal life and in work all the time. I am an Excel nerd, and I use it for work, and I use it for fun stuff, whether it's, I was like, I was telling Jeff, I was like, I have this spreadsheet that I made on Google Sheets that has like every title change I've ever seen at a wrestling match live, things like that. But while I would say I'm very good with Excel, my knowledge compared to others, there's times I want formulas and I don't know how to get them. And I'll just, input, hey, I need, this is how my spreadsheet's set up. I need to look at what's in column C, and I want the output to be in column D, and I want you to find the earliest date, and it has to have one of these 12 keywords in it. And, in doing so, I get the formula that I want, which is super powerful. But never does it give me the formula I want the first time. It's always, and I should preface this because you mentioned all the different companies. I usually use ChatGPT. Sometimes, depending on what I want, if I want an image, maybe I'll use Gemini. But it's never right the first time. It always gives you the, like, if this doesn't work, let me know. And that's the thing is that if you're not following that, you're like, oh, I got the formula, boom, here we go. And you don't spot check it to be like, that looks right, but it's not the right result. That's the problem. And that's where it's so important that you're, something like you said, like you do, Mark, is that you're training people how to use and embrace this. And you ask a billion questions to find out what they need. So it's be like, oh, this is how it works. And then you go and you're like, oh, this is how it works. And it doesn't always work that way.
Yeah, to that point, Marcus, I'll say this. Like, I've used ChatGPT and I've used Copilot for the most part. Those are the two that I've kind of focused on. I don't remember which one it was, so I don't want to besmirch the wrong one. So I'm just going to say it was one of those two, where like I was trying to get like a logo created or something, like basically taking my logo and change the coloring or something. And the challenge that I had was it seemed like, okay, I put it in there and I say, okay, do this. And it almost does it. And then I say, okay, now do this instead. And like after 3 or 4 steps, it almost forgets the first step, and I'm almost like starting again, right? So it's a case of like it forgets to nest all those ideas together. It's like, no, don't forget the first step. I want all these done, and this is how I want it. So it's almost like a circular error that I got myself into, because like I was almost there, and then something dropped off. I'm like, no, add that back in, and then something else got dropped off. So again, I understand that we're in the early innings of AI and such. I would like for it to be able to kind of like, and again, maybe it was user error, very possible, or maybe it was this version that I was using. But I would like it to kind of like remember the entire request and not just the most recent part of the request, you know?
Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes like I tell people that like AI is kind of like a wandering drunk. It's like after you've given it 1 or 2 drinks, like it's having a good conversation, it's flowing. Once you get to 7 or 8, it's like, all right, you got to restart. It's going on a crazy path.
I mean, what I will say, which has been really great for me. So my buddy John Germain has been on the show before. He's the one who created all the graphics and the show images for me. He did it so long ago that like he didn't have the original like art file. Like all I had was the JPEG or the image, whatever else like that. So I was like, hey, I think I was trying to do something for a T-shirt with my daughter or something like that. And I was like, hey, literally what font was the show logo in or something like that? And he's like, I don't know. And I was like, what do you mean you don't know? He goes, well, I think I had Adobe as a free trial for like a week or something, but I can't get into it now. So I don't have that information. So then I uploaded the logo and the font like into one of the AIs or whatever. And in like 30 seconds, it like just showed me everything I needed. I was like, that's fantastic. I think I put John out of a job, which is unfortunate because that's probably what's going to happen to a lot of, I guess, like graphic designers out there, because I'd imagine that's probably something that companies can easily cheap out on and use AI instead. It sucks. Hopefully, it doesn't work out that way. But unfortunately, as systems evolve, unfortunately, certain roles have to evolve as well, or they kind of go somewhere else.
Yeah, and it's weird because it forces people out of their comfort zone. Like those creatives that are using AI have left their comfort zone. They've mostly been against it, but they're embracing it. And it's almost as if that's kind of the way you have to go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to name anybody because obviously for reasons. My first job out of college back in 2000, I remember. So this was, 25, almost 26 years ago at this point. There was one person who his full-time job was to draw charts. So this was before, this was like the early days of PowerPoint or whatever else like that. But legitimately, his entire existence at work was to draw charts. Eventually with like projectors and, we had the light boxes, whatever else like that, I think he ended up getting put out of a job because that just wasn't needed anymore, right? You can easily create it on the computer. And it's unfortunate, right? Because he probably did that role for like 30 or 40. This was an older guy. He probably did it for like 30 or 40 years. And all of a sudden his job just didn't exist anymore. Like at 50 or 60 years old, like what do you do at that point? So it's always important, I think, especially, for you, Mark, as you're, leading the push and the drive behind this new technology to continue to, evolve, train yourself, learn new things, and kind of like push yourself to be ahead of the curve, or at least at the curve. So that way, as things kind of, go away, you're still prepared to do something else. Yeah. Question for you, Mark. So I said before, like Marcus has done like a lot of work with AI personally for like music, for photos, for logos, stuff like that. Obviously you do a lot of work with AI professionally. Like, what are your earliest memories? I mean, when I say earliest, this isn't like, hey, 50 years ago, but like, what are your earliest memories of using AI, like for personal reasons, right? Like, did you have anything that you did for your wife, your family, or just kind of like screwing around and you're like, hey, check this out? Or was like your first use of it, like at work using Copilot?
Yeah, so interestingly enough, my first use, I was like day 3 ChatGPT user. So I was currently getting my master's degree at Syracuse while basically my professor came out. It was like, oh my God, guys, this new tool was just released. And we're all like, what is he talking about? But now knowing from a data science perspective, I understand his excitement. Yeah. And basically I took that tool and I used it to help me write code in SQL and write R code that I can then use to help do some regression modeling on a programming level. And once I started to realize like, oh my gosh, it can build and replicate code and just spit it out like that. And this is years ago, I was blown away. From there, I started to really use it for work, right? So I started using Copilot. I started doing it for project management. I started building out content. And there was a period of time where I was emailing everyone with AI and just no one knew it because I was kind of like the first to use it. So I was a very early embracer. Now, over time, what I started to do is I actually used it to help me build my business. I used it to help me identify the language and verbiage that I should use to try to build out my business. And I used it for competitive research. So then I started to actually use it to dig into files from McKinsey, from BCG, from all these consulting groups that you couldn't access on Google. And I was actually able to scrape some of their backends to find PDF.doc resources that I can then use to learn. So I basically started to use it front to end for my work, for trying to build the business, and then, personally as well. And what I started to do is show my wife how to use it. So my wife's a doctor, so I showed her how to put in a medical case for a patient, who has this type of pre-existing conditions and is suffering from this and is this BMI, and to come up with like a suggestion for their health. And then I started to just try to really like talk and immerse myself with AI. So yeah, it's like it just became a tool that I added to my belt immediately, and I haven't stopped using it.
Nice. I'm going to bring up something that I'm sure will probably resonate with Marcus. Maybe Mark, you lived through it as well. So I want to say it was like a month or two ago. What was it? ChatGPT's video creation AI, Sonos or something like that, all of a sudden popped up, and like TikTok was this crazy for like 2 weeks, where I think Mr. Rogers, Tupac, and whoever else you could think of that hasn't existed in years, all of a sudden appeared. MLK, I think, appears like all sorts of videos. Like they had Mr. Rogers in a WWE ring, like just random crazy nonsense, and I was just completely blown away. I still would love to know like how that legitimately works, especially since a lot of these people, there are no high definition like videos of them, but somehow like that has come together. And I would imagine, obviously on the counter to that, like that could lead to really, really like, I guess like, bad consequences in terms of how people can create videos like that, right? Like people can make it look like somebody did something they didn't really do, and it could be used as evidence, stuff like that. So Mark, I guess my question to you, I guess, is like, is that something, again, obviously this is more, in a positive way or whatever, like, is that something that you see as like the future in terms of like what you could possibly utilize what you're doing? Or do you think like video editing and video creation like that is kind of apart from what you and your company would like to do?
I love Sora too, and I got on the app, and I can show you some of my hilarious videos. I made myself into Mariano Rivera finishing the World Series like on the mound. And in order to do so, I basically had to do like a full panoramic picture of my face, and then I had to speak for like a minute. So you do kind of have to film some type of resources to like build that out. However, it's weird, right? It's abstract, it's bizarre. And then I see videos of like Bob Ross doing things, and I start to see that, there's other influencers or famous people who don't have their IP and kind of privacy and kind of legal documents in a way that protect them from this. So that's, I think, a big threat, right? Because it's like, it's fun, it's cool, it's abstract. But once you have like a deep fake of like some, global leader saying something, and this goes to the deep fake conversation, it's scary.
Yeah.
And to think that you could like manipulate and orchestrate whole scenes that are completely AI, and us three look at them and we laugh. But then you go to Facebook and the baby boomers are like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening.
They think it's real.
And I'm like, that's concerning.
That's really scary because like, I mean, and again, not to get too deep into this, whatever, but like, over the last number of years, the number of, conspiracy theories and stuff like that have, I guess hit, let's say the baby boomers on Facebook, like, and they're really buying into it. Now, if you show some quote video footage of something happening, which didn't really happen, like that's just going to feed what they already believe, and it's just going to get 10 times worse,
To play the counter on that, though, so I was on Sora very early. That was one of the ones my brother was like, "Hey, I have this code. Get on this ASAP."
Yes,
and messing around, I would say like the first week, it was crazy. Like you could do whatever you wanted. I had videos of like Robin Williams telling my brother like, haha, you think it's funny right now that it's 60 degrees in Chicago, but like you're going to be scraping ice off your windshield next week, type thing. And, so I had like myself winning wrestling championship belts, as you said, but what I did find real quick was very interesting was you did that little panoramic video, like you said. If you put in a prompt about yourself and you weren't explicitly like, put me in a wrestling ring and put me on a baseball field, you were just like, have me doing this. Would it caught behind you in the short panoramic of your face that you did, and that it had like a room of your house pretty much mapped out perfectly from a couple seconds? That was terrifying. But what became very interesting was after that first week or two, you couldn't use Pikachu anymore. You couldn't use this person. You couldn't use that person.
Any license, right? Any things that's owned by somebody else, right?
Exactly. And there are some things like politicians and whatever where I don't know all logistics behind it, but that they're considered public domain.
Public domain, right?
You can't necessarily put yourself. But on the flip side, what I found super interesting and like very, very ahead of the time is people like Mark Cuban or Jake Paul, who got on the app, gave their scan, and said anybody could use me in a video. And by doing that, first off, you basically like that became public that they were allowing that. So like if Jake Paul's in a video doing something outlandish, he could very easily be like, hey, I am open to anyone making fake videos of me, and that's like documented. Or Mark Cuban monetized it and said you can put me in any video you want, but if you do, it has to, like, it was supposed to, it didn't work at first, but Sora got it figured out where it needs to put an ad for his pharmacy in, and he gets paid a small fee every time he's used in other people's videos. And that is super interesting to me, is like how someone like Mark Cuban very quickly is like, well, this could be chaos, but I can monetize it.
Sure.
And, you know, also make sure that people know that, like, if there's a video of me walking down the street, punching someone in the stomach and giving them the finger, that it's AI. And you all know that because it's an advertisement for my company.
Yeah, but to that point, then Jake Paul, who does some outlandish things, can now basically deny anything that he actually legitimately does and just say, no, obviously it wasn't me, right? Soro's making all this stuff of me. So now there puts some doubt in people's minds of like what's real and what's not real.
Right. I mean, maybe that's the genius, or maybe that's the terrifying part.
Right.
Which way does it go?
Could be either.
But
right?
did you see what Jake Paul did? Is someone did a Sora video of like him putting on all this makeup, and then as a joke, he made a real video of him doing it. He's like, I can't believe you guys would do this.
I did not see that, but I definitely had multiple boxing matches with Jake Paul. I had boxing matches where I was refereeing Jake Paul and Mark Cuban, which Sora doesn't do very well at putting multiple people in. But yeah, like it is super interesting. It is also terrifying, right? You see that, and that goes to, I mean, it took the whole deep fake thing to another level real quick.
Yeah. I saw a bunch of Hell in a Cell matches between Barack Obama and Donald Trump, which was intriguing to say the least, let's say. I'm sure both sides of the aisle would probably enjoy watching that. But
you also saw Hell in a Cell matches of me versus Mark Cuban, because I sent them to you, or me versus Baymax or Pikachu.
I did see those as well, yes.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, we are running low on time, so I did want to obviously, first of all, thank both Mark and Marcus for joining. Mark, I know we've talked a bit about your journey into AI Profits and working with AI. Do you want to give one last plug, any information how people can find you?
Yeah, you can find me on TikTok at AI Profits. If you search up Mark Andrews AI or go to AIprofits.com, you'll find me. And you'll find me on LinkedIn as well at linkedin.com/Mark William Andrews. So always happy to have a conversation around AI with everyone.
Awesome. Marcus Percal/Brandon, do you want to give your last, your plugs there?
Yeah. You can find me on Whatnot at Marcus Brandon, on eBay at Marcus Brandon Breaks, on Instagram at Marcus B Breaks. I should have checked that one. And no, it's Marcus B Breaks on X, excuse me.
Awesome. Yep. Last question for Mark, because I haven't seen it, but I think it probably should, but I'm probably just adding complications to it. Shouldn't AI have like a period after each, like A dot, I dot, or is everything? Because I mean, I always look at it, I'm like, is that AL or is that AI? Like, you never know, right?
Yeah. No, I hear you. It's I always do a capital AI. And then when I did the lowercase AI, I remember there was like Adobe Illustrator, and I was like, I can't do that.
Right. Awesome. So thank you both for joining. Really appreciate your time. As always, remember, guys, on Instagram, you can find us at Everybody Has a Story Pod. TikTok is at Everybody Has a Story Pod. You can reach the show out via email at everybodyhasastorypod@gmail.com for all things Jeff Seltzer. Always check me out at jeffseltzer.com on all podcast platforms, Spotify and YouTube for video, audio, everywhere else. With that said, this is our first show with guests this month. So I'm really excited about that. So thank you guys for joining. The next 2 weeks should have guests once again, some really fun ones. If they join, that'd be amazing. If not, you'll probably just have me talking to myself again. With that said, have an amazing time, amazing week, and come back next week. Take care, everybody. Peace.
Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer. Everybody has a story with Jeff Seltzer.